on a Thursday night. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
How are you guys feeling tonight? Good?
Great.
How are you feeling?
Feeling better now. Alright, let's see. I'm going to read part of a short story I've been working on for too long. And I think the story is going to be called Salt Dogs or something like that. I don't know. But it's about two friends on a road trip in the desert. I think that's all you need to know for this. We're passing through a place called Desert Shores, getting some speed under us where the shadows hang heavy on the rocks, like a curtain pulled all over this. Ahead on the side of the road is a hand-painted sign that reads, "Jerky next right." I slow down looking for the turn and pull off onto a dirt road that winds its way to a shack. On the roof of the shack, the word jerky is painted in giant letters, just like the ones on the sign. In blue and red neon, the word open blinks in the window. Inside the shack is an old man. He's a codger if I ever saw one, and no doubt, a seasoned dog man. White hair, white patchy beard, eyes magnified behind thick lenses that cover half his face. His skin is scored and rescored with deep creases, trenches dug by time as though life on earth has taken bits and pieces of him with it into some unknown abyss. A tax on his existence. There's less of him now than there was at the start. "Howdy," he says, but doesn't look up. He's working a crossword in the back of a magazine. His eyes never leave the page it's printed on as he explains his wares that hang from metal hooks on the wall behind the counter where he sits, perched on a stool. "We've got beef jerky, turkey jerky, emu jerky, and buffalo. Pepper, barbecue, and teriyaki. Small bags are 6, big bags are 10. I make it all myself." Outside the shack, we smoke and share a big bag of buffalo jerky. I don't know how we got on this line of conversation. It doesn't matter. We're discussing death. I tell Sugar Brain how I find myself thinking I'll die in absurdist fashion, like Camus in his publisher's car. The thought flits through my mind more than I care to admit. I can't shake the feeling that when I go, it'll have something to do with falling down a sewer or being flattened by a garbage truck. Sugar Brain's lips become a thin line pulled tight at one corner by an invisible string, forming a shape that might be called a smile. All death is absurd, he tells me. In that way, it's no different from life. The only distinction to be made is between gradients of absurdity. What's more absurd, dying of cancer or dying of a gunshot? The cells of your body multiply uncontrollably until you die? That's absurd. A chunk of hot lead rips through your body? That's absurd. Even dying in your sleep is absurd. You go to bed like you have every night of your life. The rhythm of your breath changes. You dream, but unlike any other time, there's no waking. Absurd. But that's not how people think about dying in the night. They think it mundane, a mundane death, the kind people hope for, which in itself is absurd, hoping for a kind of death, as if it matters. But that's the nature of humans, assigning meaning to the inscrutable. What's troubling you isn't the notion of dying absurdly, my dude. It's the thought of dying ignominiously. Just then the jerky codger comes out of the shack. He's holding the magazine in one hand, folded over to the page containing the puzzle. His pen is at the ready. He stands beneath the awning of his little porch, shaded from the heat of the sun. "That's a cheery ride you boys got there," he says. "If you like lime green Caminos, that is. Personally, I was always more into that Detroit muscle. The sun is bright where we're standing in the dirt, so that Sugar Brain has to close one eye to look at the man. She's an acquired taste, he says, our stultifera navis." The old man nods, smiling politely at the reference I doubt he understands. I wish Sugar Brain hadn't done that, rubbed the old man's nose in the difference between us. He's fooling himself anyway. At bottom, all dogmen are the same. I take a last drag of my cigarette, stub out the butt in the dirt and toss it into a trash can next to the shack. "Thanks for the jerky," I tell him. Sugar Brain and I walk to the car. I fish the keys from my pocket. As I open the door, the codger calls from the porch. "What's a 4-letter word for destiny?" "Doom," I tell him. I got time? These characters want you to drink and smoke as much as you can, so. Alright. A little bit later, we drive along the Highway 10, cutting across BLM land, low desert, until we come across a back road called Indian Pass that the map says leads to a campground. That may or may not be where we are now. It's hard to say. I turn off the engine and pick up a journal from the car floor to write down the day's events. I guess the date. I write all I can remember and drink whiskey until all I can do is drink whiskey. That's when I pick up the recorder. I hold it to my lips and slide the power button to on and click record. I repeat the words I've written, a little slurred probably, and turn it off. Then I get out of the car. Sugar Brain is already out, looking at the Twin Mountains and to the east as the sun slips from view in back of him. The stars come out one at a time. This place, whatever it is frightening and beautiful in its emptiness. Sounds would travel far here if there were any to be heard. It's just fields of spindly alcatillos groping at the encroaching darkness like the deformed hands of a palsy victim. The mountain Sugar Brain is staring at are the cargo muchachos, the loaded boys. I've heard of them, heard about them somewhere. Once they were full of gold, but no longer. The Spaniards stripped them clean for God and country, but mostly for themselves. I walk over to Sugar Brain and hand him the whiskey. He takes it from me and drinks. We drink and drink and drink until we're drunk, until it's late and all the stars are out. And so is the moon. It's big and white above us, the color of cuttlefish bone. I'm looking up at it, standing, staggering, smiling. My head is tilted all the way back, and I know I should swivel it back to normal alignment because if I'm stumbling around so much I could fall. But I don't want to. I'm under its spell. I wish I could swallow it, or it me. The space between us, infinite for all practical purpose, seems like nothing. Like the distance from one page of a book to another. Turn the page and you're there. This thought makes me laugh, and Sugar Brain asks what's so funny. Nothing, I tell him. All right. Thanks, guys.
Ben Austin from CCA, ladies and gentlemen. We've been